The holidays are beautiful, but behind the lights, the music, and the perfect decorations, there are families silently breaking. Tonight's story reveals the hidden dangers behind Christmas, the pressure, the exhaustion, and the battles no one talks about. This is a tale that will touch your heart, open your eyes, and remind you what truly matters. Sit back, breathe, and let this story speak to your soul. The first snow of December had just started to fall over the quiet suburban street of Wesley Avenue, one of those familiar neighborhoods where every house seemed to blend tradition and modern life into something warm enough to hold you through winter. The air smelled of distant fireplaces, roasted chestnuts sold outside the town center, and the faint promise of Christmas approaching. But beneath all that charm and sparkle, something else lingered, something people rarely acknowledged, something the Evans family was about to learn too late. For years, Christmas had been the highlight of the Evans household. Their front door was always the first on the street to carry a wreath. Their lights always shone the brightest. Their living room always looked like a scene from a catalog, cozy, perfect, intentional. This year, however, the house felt unusually quiet. Because everything was different now. Because everything was fragile. Daniel Evans, the father, had lost his job in late October due to company restructuring. He hadn't told anyone except his wife, Sarah, who'd tried her absolute best to hold everything together while pretending life was still steady. Their daughter, Lily, was in her first year of secondary school, bright, hopeful, excited about Christmas like she always was. She had no idea how much pressure filled the walls around her. The Evans family looked fine from the outside. In fact, if you walked by their home that first week of December, you'd think they were living the perfect Christmas dream. But reality? Reality was sitting at the kitchen table every night, figuring out what bill could wait till January. Reality was Daniel scrolling endlessly through job listings with a sinking heart. Reality was Sarah quietly calculating how many meals she could stretch out of what remained in the pantry. Reality was the pressure to make Christmas magical, while trying not to drown under the weight of expectations. That's the thing about Christmas. The glitter can blind you to the shadows behind it. The joy can hide the exhaustion. The celebrations can mute the silent battles happening inside homes across the world. And for the Evans family, those shadows were growing thicker. It happened on a Saturday morning, 2 weeks before Christmas. The town center was buzzing with life. Families were out shopping, taking pictures by the giant tree, grabbing warm drinks from the cafe next to the pharmacy. Sarah had taken Lily out to buy a few bits, the essentials. Nothing fancy this year. But while browsing the aisles, Sarah suddenly felt her chest tighten. It wasn't a dramatic collapse. Not the kind you'd see in a movie, just a quiet moment where her heart raced and her vision blurred for a second. She blinked it away, forced a smile, pretended she was fine. Because mums don't fall apart in public. Not at Christmas, not when their child is watching. That night, she brushed it off as stress. A little tiredness. Nothing serious. Nothing worth worrying her family about. But the truth? She was running on fumes. Emotionally, physically, mentally, and hiding it beneath the pressure to keep Christmas alive only pushed her further into the silent dangers so many people face during the holidays. By the second week of December, the Evans home looked festive as ever. Lights twinkled around the windows. A tall, artificial tree stood in the corner of the living room. There were wrapped boxes under the tree, not all filled, but positioned carefully so it looked full. Because appearances mattered this season. Because no parent wants their child to feel left out. Because Christmas, especially in the world, came with a whisper of competition: whose house looked the nicest, whose kids got the best gifts, whose family seemed the happiest. But behind those decorations were emotional cracks, deep enough to split the floor beneath the Evans' feet. Daniel barely slept anymore. His mind raced through job worries, bills, rent, and the rising cost of energy. Meanwhile, Sarah was carrying the emotional weight of the whole family, smiling, cooking, planning, worrying in silence. And Lily? She sensed something was off, but no one told her anything. Children always notice what adults try to hide. It was December 18th. Cold, quiet. One of those nights when the air bit your skin. Lily was upstairs finishing a handmade Christmas card for her parents when the lights in her room suddenly flickered again, and died. The whole house went dark. No warning, no noise, just pure, heavy darkness. "Dad?" she called out. A moment later, she heard Daniel's footsteps on the stairs. "It's all right, sweetheart. Looks like a power trip." His tone was calm, but his chest tightened as he made his way to the fuse box. He already knew why it happened. Because they were behind on the electricity bill. Because the notice had come earlier that week. Because he'd told himself he'd sort it before it got this far. But life doesn't care about timing, not even at Christmas. He reset the switch. Nothing. He tried again. Still nothing. Sarah watched him in the dim glow of his phone flashlight, her heart sinking. She could see the shame in his eyes, shame he didn't deserve. The weight of the season had finally snapped something, and the silence that followed was heavier than darkness. That night, they sat together in the living room, using candles for light. Lily thought it was all fun, like camping indoors, and her laughter was the only warm thing in the room. But Daniel felt like a failure. Sarah felt guilt eating her alive, and the tension between them, unspoken, sharp, wrapped itself around their hearts. Christmas was supposed to bring people together, but sometimes the pressure of it pushes families apart. The next morning, the power still hadn't been restored. Daniel stepped outside to make a phone call to the company, but paused when he noticed the neighbors across the street decorating their windows. Their lights worked. Their home looked perfect. Their laughter carried across the street like a reminder of everything he felt he was failing to provide. A quiet voice inside him whispered, "You're not enough." It was a lie one many people hear in December, but it felt real. Meanwhile, inside the house, Sarah was packing ornaments back into boxes, not because she wanted to, but because staring at them kept reminding her of everything falling apart. And then, she froze mid-movement, gripping the edge of the table. A wave of dizziness hit her so hard she had to catch herself before she fell. Her heart raced. Her hands trembled. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. And still, she whispered to herself, "It's just stress. I'm fine. It's Christmas. I can't worry them." That silence. It was the real danger behind the season. Later that week, something small but powerful happened. While picking up a few groceries, Daniel ran into their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Grant, the sweet lady who always baked mince pies for the street. She looked at him with warm eyes and asked, "Are you all right, dear? You look tired." He forced a smile. "Just the holidays, you know." She nodded, but her gaze softened like she could see the truth hiding behind his words. Then, without asking for details, she pressed a folded envelope into his hand. "Everyone needs a little help sometimes," she whispered, "even at Christmas." Inside was just enough to clear the electricity bill. Just enough to breathe again. And for the first time in weeks, Daniel's shoulders loosened. The power returned that evening. The lights flickered on. The house glowed again. But the family didn't feel healed. They felt exposed, fragile, different. They knew now what many never admit. Christmas wasn't just joy and gifts and glitter. It could be overwhelming, emotionally draining, financially suffocating. A season of pressure disguised as celebration. The Evans had stepped into the shadows behind the season, and they weren't out of them yet, because the true danger, the one that would nearly break them, was still coming, and it would arrive on Christmas Eve. The one night meant for peace would become the night everything fell apart. Christmas Eve arrived quietly on Westley Avenue, the kind of cold, crisp night where the sky held a soft glow from distant lights, and every house seemed to hum with life. Children ran up and down the street playing with sparkly reindeer headbands, neighbors carried tins of shortbread and trays of warm dishes, and families gathered indoors around soft lights and decorated trees. But inside the Evans home, the air felt heavier than winter. Despite everything, the Evans family had tried their best to pull the house together for the holiday. The power was back. The tree still stood proudly, though a bit emptier than usual. The aroma of cinnamon biscuits floated through the living room. Sarah had insisted on baking, even though she looked exhausted from the moment she opened her eyes. Every smile she wore felt thin, a little shaky around the edges. Every breath she took seemed a bit too shallow. Every step was slower than the last. But she hid it, because parents, especially mothers, often hide their storms to protect their children's smiles. And Christmas brought out that self-sacrifice even more. Lily happily wrapped her handmade cards and placed them beneath the tree. She hummed carols as she taped glitter onto the corners, and her parents kept glancing at each other over her head, exchanging worried looks neither had the courage to voice. Christmas Eve should have felt peaceful. Instead, it felt like holding your breath, waiting for something you didn't want to admit might be coming. They had dinner early, roasted chicken instead of turkey this year, humble but warm. The conversation was soft, light, avoiding anything real. But underneath it, the unspoken tension pulsed like a steady drumbeat. "How are you feeling?" Daniel asked quietly when Lily left the table to check on the biscuits. Sarah forced a smile. "Just tired. It's been a long month." That was the understatement of the century. She felt drained emotionally, physically, mentally, like she had poured out every last drop of herself into holding the family together. But she didn't want to ruin Christmas Eve by worrying her husband. Daniel didn't buy the smile, but he let it slide. He had grown afraid of pushing too hard, afraid of making her stress worse. Sometimes the danger wasn't in the argument. It was in the silence. Later that evening, Lily stood between her parents holding a little box wrapped in red paper. Her eyes sparkled with pride. "I made something for you both," she said softly. "It's my Christmas wish." Inside the box were 3 paper stars, each one carefully cut and decorated. On them she had written, "For Mom, more rest. For Dad, more smiles. For our family, no more worries." The simplicity of it was devastating. Children always see the truth, even when adults try to hide it. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She fought hard to blink away. Daniel swallowed hard, his heart pulling in 2 directions, grateful for the love, broken by the reality. But he hugged her tight, and for the first time in weeks, their home felt truly warm. Just for a moment. It happened shortly after 10 p.m. The house was quiet, the lights soft. The glow from the tree flickered gently across the walls. Daniel stepped outside to discard some rubbish, humming under his breath, and paused to admire the street, every window shimmering with decorations, every doorway glowing. Inside, Sarah was finishing the last of the washing up, but her hands trembled. Her breath hitched. She felt her heart pounding hard, far too hard. At first, she ignored it. She always ignored it. She told herself it was stress, or tiredness, or the long month catching up to her. But then, a sharp wave of dizziness hit. The kitchen floor tilted, the sound in her ears muffled. She reached for the counter, missed, and collapsed. The bowl she was washing shattered on the tiles beside her. "Mom?" Lily's scream shattered the peaceful silence of Christmas Eve. Daniel heard it before the sound even hit the door. He dropped the bin bag and ran inside, and the sight broke him. Sarah lying still on the kitchen floor, the broken bowl glinting beside her. Lily sobbing so hard her whole body shook. "Sarah!" Daniel fell to his knees, lifting her head gently. She was breathing, but shallow, unsteady, faint. Her lips were pale, her skin clammy, her heartbeat irregular under his trembling fingertips. And in that moment, Daniel understood. All the signs she had brushed off, all the quiet complaints, all the exhaustion she tried to hide. It wasn't just stress. It never was. The danger behind Christmas, the silent physical toll, the emotional load, the pressure, the sleepless nights, the pretending, had finally taken its price. Daniel grabbed his phone with shaking hands. His voice cracked as he dialed emergency services. Within minutes that felt like hours, flashing lights turned their quiet street into a blur of urgency. Paramedics rushed in, gentle but swift, checking vitals, asking questions, lifting Sarah onto a stretcher with practiced care. Neighbors peeked through curtains, some stepping outside with concern, their festive night suddenly overshadowed by fear. Lily clung to Daniel's coat, crying uncontrollably. He wrapped her tightly in his arms, even as his own heart felt like it was splitting apart. Nothing, not lights, not gifts, not decorations, mattered anymore. Only her, only family, only the fragile breath of someone they loved. Hospitals on Christmas Eve were a strange mix of quiet and urgency. Some people carried small injuries from decorating, some were there for late-season colds, and some, like the Evans family, held the weight of something deeper. Daniel sat beside Lily in the waiting room, holding her hand tightly. She rested her head on his arm, her eyes red and puffy. "Is Mom going to be okay?" she whispered. He squeezed her hand. "I hope so, sweetheart. The doctors are helping her." It was the most honest answer he could give. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like forever. Every time a nurse walked by, Daniel's chest tightened. Every time a trolley rolled past, Lily flinched. Christmas music played quietly in the background, and it felt wrong, like a reminder of a joy they couldn't touch right now. Finally, just after midnight, Christmas Day now, a doctor approached them. A calm-faced woman with tired eyes, but a gentle voice. "She's stable," she said softly. Daniel closed his eyes, relief flooding him so suddenly he almost swayed. "But she's exhausted," the doctor continued, "emotionally, physically. Her body has been under a lot of strain. She's dehydrated. Her heart rhythm was irregular. She's been pushing herself too hard for too long." Sarah had nearly collapsed from exhaustion and prolonged stress. A dangerous combination many people underestimate, especially during the holiday season. "She needs rest," the doctor added. "Real rest. Not the kind where you still worry about everything." Daniel nodded, tears gathering. Lily hugged him so tightly his ribs hurt. They were going to be okay, but they had come too close to losing each other. They were allowed to see her. The room was dim and quiet, the only light coming from a small lamp by the bed. Sarah looked fragile but conscious, her face softening into a tired smile when she saw them. "Merry Christmas," she whispered. Her voice was weak, but warm. Daniel sat beside her, taking her hand. "Don't ever scare me like that again," he said with a shaky laugh. She tried to smile, but tears filled her eyes. "I just didn't want to ruin Christmas." "Oh, Mom." Lily climbed onto the chair beside her, gently hugging her arm. "You are Christmas. We don't care about anything else." And that was the truth. Not decorations, not perfect dinners. Not gifts, not appearances, just them, together, safe. For the rest of the night now, early Christmas morning, the Evans family sat together in that tiny hospital room. The world outside was cold, star-filled, hushed. Inside, the room felt warmer than anywhere else on Earth. They talked, really talked, about the stress, about the expectations, about the pressure to be perfect during Christmas, about how they had been carrying everything alone when they should have leaned on each other. Daniel confessed about the job loss. Sarah confessed about how overwhelmed she had been. And Lily, with all the honesty of childhood, said, "I don't need a perfect Christmas. I just need my parents." Her words cut through all the worry, all the pressure, all the fear. In the quiet glow of that hospital room, they made a silent promise. Never again let the weight of Christmas expectations crush the people they love. When morning arrived, snow dusted the hospital windows. Nurses offered warm smiles as they walked by, some humming to themselves, doing their best to bring cheer to a place that rarely felt festive. And the Evans family shared their Christmas breakfast sitting on the edge of Sarah's hospital bed. Plastic cups of tea and a small packet of biscuits. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't traditional. It wasn't what they'd planned. But it was real, peaceful, honest, and somehow, it was the best Christmas they'd ever had. When they were finally discharged later that afternoon, Daniel pushed Sarah gently in a wheelchair while Lily carried her handmade star box. Walking into their home felt different now. The decorations didn't matter as much. What mattered was the life inside the home, not the sparkle on the outside. Christmas had nearly broken them, but it had also brought them closer together than ever. Because behind every shining Christmas light, there are people carrying stories, struggles, stresses, and silent battles. Behind every decorated window, there's someone holding back tears or exhaustion. Behind every festive season, there are real human hearts trying their best. And the Evans family finally understood. Christmas doesn't need to be perfect to be meaningful. It only needs to be honest. That night, long after Lily fell asleep, Daniel tucked Sarah gently into bed. He sat beside her, brushing a strand of hair off her forehead, overwhelmed with gratitude that she was still here, still breathing, still his. She whispered, "We'll be okay, won't we?" He kissed her hand. "We already are." They didn't have all the answers. They didn't know how January would look. They didn't know what challenges were ahead. But for the first time in a long time, they weren't afraid, because they had faced the darkest part of the season. Not the night, not the cold, not the struggles, but the pressure, the silence, the burden of pretending, and they had survived it together. As they drifted to sleep in the soft glow of the Christmas lights, lights that no longer symbolized pressure or perfection, they held each other with gratitude deep enough to warm the entire house. Christmas was no longer something to fear. It had become something simple, gentle, human, a reminder that life, with all its fragile beauty, is the greatest gift. And that was the true meaning hidden behind the dangers of Christmas. Thank you for watching till the end. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, like, then share it, because someone out there might need this reminder more than you know. Christmas doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real. Stay kind, stay gentle with yourself, and remember, the greatest gift we can give is love. Stay safe.